$145 million. That is the cost cap introduced by Formula One in 2021, the maximum amount a team is permitted to spend on car development and racing operations per season. $145 million. It sounds like a ceiling. It is not a ceiling. It is a floor. The budget cap covers approximately half of what a competitive Formula One team actually spends per year. The other half, driver salaries, engine supply, marketing operations, factory infrastructure, and the global logistics of moving a racing operation to 24 venues across 5 continents, sits entirely outside the cap, unconstrained, unregulated, and growing. The Formula One World Championship is the most watched annual sporting series on the planet. Hundreds of millions of viewers per season, averaging approximately 70 million per race across a calendar of 22 events. Netflix's Drive to Survive added an entirely new generation of fans across North America. The commercial rights holder, Formula One Group, reported revenues of $3.2 billion in 2023. The sport had never been more popular. Hundreds of millions of people, more than the combined population of the United States and Canada, all of them watching the same 50 logos go around the same circuit for 2 hours. And not a single team on the grid is financially sustainable on race prize money alone. Not one. This is the complete financial analysis of what it actually costs to own a Formula One team, and where the money to run one actually comes from. 3 mechanisms, all of them operating outside the number that appears in the headlines. Let's begin. Before the mechanisms, what this business actually is. The race is not the product. The race is the reason 50 logos appear on the car. The product is the logo placement. Formula One teams operate what is, structurally, a global branding platform that happens to also produce the world's most technically sophisticated racing cars. The television audience is not the team's customer. The audience is the delivery mechanism for the team's actual customers, the corporations that pay to have their brand visible to hundreds of millions of people, in a context of performance, precision, and aspiration that no conventional advertising medium replicates. The car is the billboard. The race is the broadcast. The team is the media company. Mechanism 1. The prize money gap. Formula One distributes a share of its commercial revenues to participating teams through a system called the Concorde Agreement, the commercial framework that governs how the sport's revenues are divided between the rights holder and the constructors. In 2023, Formula One Group reported revenues of approximately $3.2 billion. Of that, a portion is distributed to teams through the prize fund. The distribution is not equal. It is weighted by championship performance, historical participation bonuses, and legacy payments to the sport's most established constructors. A team finishing in the top 3 of the Constructors' Championship might receive between $80 and $140 million in prize fund distributions. A team finishing in the bottom half of the grid might receive $30 to $60 million. The budget cap is $145 million. A midfield team receiving $60 million in prize money faces an immediate gap of $85 million, before accounting for anything outside the cap. Before the engine lease, before the drivers, before the motorhome that costs $12 million to build and transport to every race. The prize money is not the income. The prize money is a contribution toward a cost base that is 3 to 4 times larger. $60 million in prize money, $145 million in the cap, and the cap covers only half the business. The problem is not the cap. It is the gap between every one of those numbers. Every team on the grid operates with that gap. The question is not whether the gap exists. The question is how each team fills it. Mechanism 2. The budget cap is not the budget. The cost cap introduced in 2021 was designed to improve competitive balance, preventing the wealthiest teams from simply outspending their rivals into irrelevance. It is, on its stated terms, partially effective. It is also substantially incomplete as a description of what a team spends. The budget cap excludes, explicitly and by design, the following categories of expenditure. Driver salaries. The 2 drivers are the most visible faces of the operation. In 2023, Max Verstappen's reported salary was approximately $55 million per year. Lewis Hamilton's reported salary was approximately $40 million. These figures, the most commercially significant cost of running a competitive team, are entirely outside the $145 million cap. Engine supply, power unit development and leasing is excluded from the cap. A customer team purchasing an engine from a manufacturer pays approximately $15 to $20 million per season for the supply agreement. The manufacturer's own development costs, running into hundreds of millions annually, are excluded from any cap calculation. Marketing and hospitality. The paddock motorhomes of the top teams, multi-story structures with catering, media facilities, and client entertainment spaces, cost $10 to $15 million per unit and are transported to every race at significant logistical expense, excluded from the cap. Factory operations and capital expenditure beyond a defined threshold. The wind tunnels, the manufacturing equipment, the simulator technology, the physical infrastructure that makes the car possible, sits partially or entirely outside the regulated spending limit. $145 million is the number the sport uses to describe what teams spend. The actual annual operating cost of a top-tier Formula One team, between $400 and $500 million. The midfield teams operate on total budgets of approximately $200 to $300 million. $55 million for Verstappen, $40 million for Hamilton. The cap of $145 million does not cover the two drivers combined, and neither driver is inside the cap at all. The cap covers the car, the business costs the rest. Mechanism 3. Where the money actually comes from. A Formula One team has three primary revenue streams. Prize money, which we have established does not cover the cost base, and two mechanisms that the headline coverage of the sport consistently underweights. The first is sponsorship. Title sponsorship of a competitive Formula One team generates between $50 and $110 million per season, depending on team performance, television exposure, and the brand alignment of the sponsor. Secondary sponsorships. The smaller logos on the side pods, the rear wing, the driver's helmets, generate $5 to $30 million each, tiered by visibility and impression count. The commercial value of a logo on a Formula One car is not priced against the cost of equivalent billboard advertising. It is priced against the context, the perceived exclusivity of Formula One association, the global audience quality, and the social media amplification from a sport that generates 2.4 billion social media impressions per race weekend. Red Bull Racing's title sponsorship from Oracle, announced in 2022, was reported at approximately $75 to $100 million per year, a single deal, more than the prize money received by several teams in the same season. The second revenue stream, and the one most consistently absent from public analysis, is technology transfer and applied engineering. Formula One teams are among the most sophisticated engineering organizations on Earth. The composite materials, aerodynamic simulation software, data analysis systems, and manufacturing processes developed for race car performance have direct commercial applications. Teams license this technology to automotive manufacturers, aerospace companies, defense contractors, and medical device producers. Mercedes-AMG Petronas has applied Formula One-derived engineering to road car development through AMG performance vehicles. McLaren Applied, the technology division spun out from McLaren Racing, sells timing systems, data analytics platforms, and electrification technology derived from Formula One R&D to sectors well beyond motorsport. The race generates the engineering pressure. The engineering generates the intellectual property. The intellectual property generates revenue that has nothing to do with where the car finishes on Sunday. The record year revelation. 2023 was the most commercially successful season in Formula One history. Record revenues for the commercial rights holder. Record television audiences. Record attendance at a record 22 races, including the inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix, a street circuit that generated significant commercial activity for the sport and for the city. And the prize fund distribution to teams, in the most successful year the sport had ever commercially produced, did not cover the operating costs of a single team on the grid. Not the bottom team, not the midfield, not the teams receiving the maximum distribution. The sport had its best year. The economics of running a team within that sport did not change. The gap between prize money and operating cost is structural. It does not close in good years. It is filled every year by sponsorship, by technology licensing, and by the financial resources of the entities. corporations, sovereign wealth funds, private equity, that own the teams. Fewer competitive results do not shrink the gap. More competitive results grow it, because a championship-winning operation costs more to build and sustain than a midfield one. The final calculation. Team A, a midfield constructor. Total budget, $230 million. Revenue breakdown, $60 million in prize money, $120 million in sponsorship across title and secondary partners, $50 million from technology licensing and applied engineering. Total revenue, $230 million. Operating result, break even, in a year with no major development failures, no driver contract disputes, and no regulatory penalty. The margin for error, 0. Team B, a top 3 constructor. Total budget, $470 million. Prize money, $120 million. Title sponsorship, $90 million. Secondary sponsors and partner programs, $110 million. Technology licensing and commercial partnerships, $80 million. Factory cost recovery from engine customers, $70 million. Total revenue, $470 million. Operating margin, approximately 5 to 8%, enough to reinvest in the next season's car development. The difference between Team A and Team B is not primarily the prize money. The prize money gap between a 3rd place and a 7th place constructor is approximately $50 to $60 million. The real gap is in the commercial infrastructure, the sponsorship relationships built over decades, the technology licensing portfolio, the factory utilization from engine customer revenue that allows Team B to operate with a margin while Team A operates at break-even. Now scale it. Formula One has 10 teams. The combined commercial revenues of the sport, broadcast rights, race hosting fees, sponsorship, are expected to reach $4 billion annually by 2026. If prize fund distribution reaches $1 billion across all teams, approximately the projected figure, the total prize money covers approximately 30% of the combined team operating costs. The other 70% is filled by logos on cars. Every logo on every car is a company that decided Formula One's audience was worth more than any other advertising medium at that price point. They may be right. Hundreds of millions of viewers per season, in a context that generates 2.4 billion social media impressions per race weekend, would suggest they are. But the teams are not entertainment businesses. They are not sport businesses. They are engineering companies that use racing to demonstrate what their engineering can do, and marketing platforms that use the same racing to place their sponsors' brands in front of audiences that cannot be reached any other way. The closing, $145 million. The budget cap, the number that headlines use to describe what it costs to compete in Formula One. It is the number that describes the car. The business costs 3 to 4 times that. In driver contracts, in engines, in motorhomes crossing 5 continents, in wind tunnels running 24 hours a day, in engineering teams working on problems that will not appear on a race circuit for another 2 seasons. The car finishes first on Sunday. The logo is what wins the week, and somewhere right now, a marketing director is calculating whether a $50 million sponsorship agreement is worth it. They are comparing it against every other advertising medium available to them: television, digital, out of home. And then they are looking at 2 hours of global broadcast, 2.4 billion social media impressions, and hundreds of millions of people watching a car with their brand on it in a context of precision, performance, and aspiration. The math says yes. That is what the $145 million was never about.